Welcome back to the Cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is continuing the short-term bounce from this exact level of support as the price on the larger timeframes is technically still flashing this massive warning signal we need to pay attention to, while Ethereum is technically still struggling underneath this major area of resistance, but the price of XRP right now in the short term is currently bouncing from this exact Fibonacci level. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, starting off on the weekly Bitcoin price chart, and the super trendy indicator is still sitting in the green, indicating a larger bull market. But of course, on this weekly Bitcoin price chart, we still have that major warning signal to watch out for, which over the last few days has not technically changed. At least for now, we're still seeing higher highs in the price of Bitcoin on the weekly time frame and lower highs in the weekly Bitcoin RSI. And so even though this does not guarantee the end of the bull market, once again, technically we're still within a larger bull market. But what this does mean is that at least over the next few weeks or months, so maybe 1 or 2 months, we are indeed losing momentum for potentially that time period is usually what we see from a bearish divergence on the weekly time frame. We saw the last time play out over around a few months, basically between December 2024 towards around the end of March 2025. And then the time before that was this bearish divergence right here between these two highs that confirmed around July 2023. That played out throughout pretty much all of July and almost all of August until basically early September, so a couple of months worth of a pullback in the price of Bitcoin. And then of course the time before that was this bearish divergence, which ultimately played out for around 1 year. But of course we saw a lot of other factors also causing that 2022 bear market as well. And so just keep this in mind. Obviously the larger timeframes don't change all that much. The small timeframes pretty much always flip between bullish and bearish because they're only talking about short-term moves. But of course the larger timeframes here technically still in a larger bull market, but still have this warning signal to watch out for when we're talking about the next 1 or 2 months, basically lacking momentum. And if we're taking a look at this 3-day Bitcoin price chart, at least for now, the 3-day Bitcoin MACD is technically still looking more bearish than it is bullish, as at least for now, it is sitting in the red after a recent bearish crossover. And the last couple of times we saw this confirm in the 3-day Bitcoin MACD, we basically either saw a bit more of a short-term pullback just in the immediate short term before ultimately seeing another pump later on in the next couple of weeks, or potentially a bit more of a larger pullback to pay attention to. But overall, of course, this is a sign that at least in the shorter term, we're still currently lacking bullish momentum, at least for now. But once again, as I've been saying this entire time, that does not mean that we can't see any short-term bounces like what we've seen over the last few days. Obviously, we've bounced from pretty much this exact support level right here, sitting at around $112,000 per Bitcoin. So continue to expect support at around 112,000, as I've been saying since before we saw that perfect bounce from that exact level. But you can see here in the price of Bitcoin, even though yes, we're currently bouncing from this support, at least for now, we don't currently have a lot of bullish momentum. Obviously, we are seeing some sort of bullish price action here, some bounce here from this support, which is to be expected. But in terms of momentum towards the upside, like what we saw back here, for example, or zooming out like what we saw here, for example, at least for now, we simply don't currently have that bullish momentum in the market. But if we're zooming into the immediate short term, taking a look at just the 8-hour time frame, we're seeing some early signs of a possible change in just the short term price structure. Once again, this is only on the 8-hour time frame here. Obviously, for the last 1 or 2 weeks, give or take, we were in more of a short term bearish trend, forming lower highs and lower lows. But just over the last 1 to 2 days, we've now just formed the first higher low that we've seen in multiple weeks. And just in the candle closes here, technically we do have a higher high in the price, but technically in terms of the actual high, the candle wick high right here, we're still waiting for a possible higher high to actually confirm, a proper higher high to actually confirm here. So we're still waiting for a little bit more confirmation for an actual change in price structure, but we do have an early sign, which is this higher low, actually an early sign of a change in price structure. In other words, a possible reversal signal from a bearish trend into a short-term bullish trend. But once again, ideally, we're still waiting for a little bit more confirmation here, actually confirming a new higher high. And we also have a possible double bottom pattern here, a W pattern that is worth pointing out. Obviously, if this actually confirms, which technically speaking has just confirmed with one candle close, and because we've just seen a candle close above this neckline right here, which is sitting at around 115,000 approximately. But if we see a candle close back below 115,000, that would invalidate this potential double bottom pattern, the W pattern. But if we can now hold above 115,000 and continue a little bit more of a bounce in the short term, that will set up a short short-term bullish price target based on this being a W pattern sitting at around 117.5k. And so if we're measuring that move from roughly 115,000 to 117.5k, obviously that's roughly around a 2% move towards the upside. So once again, not a massive move. We're only talking about very short-term moves here, obviously small moves on the smaller timeframes. But remember, if we break back below 115,000 with candle closes back below 115,000, then essentially we do not have that price target anymore to pay attention to, because we'll be invalidating that short-term breakout for this possible double bottom pattern. But remember, all of that's just talking about the short term, and obviously here in the short term, this flips between bullish and bearish pretty much every few days. So if you're tired of constantly flipping between bullish and bearish, then just stick to the part of the video where I'm talking about the larger time frames. Obviously, I've been talking about this super trend indicator and the bull market for years now on the channel. Since 2023, I've been talking about the bull market basically every day non-stop, haven't changed on that. But of course, during the much larger bull market, we do have periods in the market in the shorter term where we see these short-term bearish trends or corrections during the bull market. And obviously, we saw a very small one right here on the 8-hour time frame just over the last couple of weeks. And so sometimes I get some comments here on these videos saying I'm always flipping between bullish and bearish. But of course, that's the case if you're looking at the short term here on the smaller time frames. That's simply the nature of the short term. It's always changing constantly because we're only looking at short-term moves that don't last very long. And so for the people always looking for new trading opportunities, high frequent trades, obviously the small time frames is great for that because it's always flipping around and changing directions. But if you're basically tired of flipping around, changing directions, just stick to the larger time frames, which barely change. And if we're taking a quick look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, we can still see that major level of liquidity sitting in the short term at around 111.8k. So keep that in mind. That's still a possible price target in the shorter term. It's still possible we could come back down to maybe wipe out that liquidity right around here, which remember, we still have a lot of support at around 112,000 as well. So keep that in mind. If the price does get closer towards 112,000, expect some sort of bounce around there. But also in the shorter term, we do have a small area of liquidity at closer towards 116,000 starting to build. So keep that in mind. We may push a little bit higher to take out that liquidity as well. And if we're actually zooming out on this Bitcoin liquidation heat map to the last 2 weeks worth of price action, we can see that we also still have that major level of liquidity sitting at around 120,000. But even though, of course, I've been talking about this liquidity at 120,000 over the last 1 week, give or take, I've also been mentioning here on the channel that, of course, between the current price and 120k, we have a lot of resistance levels to pay attention to where the price could possibly reject from, like what we saw right here. And on top of support and resistance levels, and of course the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, we also have to consider the simple momentum, the simple fact of momentum in the market and where the market is starting to trend. Once again, for the last couple of weeks, we have been in a short-term bearish trend, and on the larger time frames, technically the momentum is starting to point a little bit more in the bearish direction. So keep that in mind when we're talking about the next few weeks or possibly months based on this weekly bearish divergence. But if perhaps this short-term W pattern starts to confirm here, if we can basically right now hold above 115,000 and break above this little high right here at around 115.7k, in that situation, yes, we may head a little bit higher just in the immediate short term to take out potentially some of these points of liquidity. But between the current price and say 120,000, once again, we have points of resistance along the way. For example, I would expect resistance based on this previous center line right here, based on the previous descending parallel channel, and that's sitting at approximately around just above 116,000, around 116.5k, give or take. And above that, we have major resistance based on this line right here, which is sitting at approximately 118.5k. And so that is the current situation in the shorter term. Once again, we're still waiting for a little bit more confirmation here, but just be aware that it is possible if this further confirms above this little high, expect maybe a little bit more of a short-term bullish relief over the next couple of days, which could be a likely scenario. But overall, on the larger time frames, once again, this has not changed. We're still looking at a possible warning signal or possible bearish divergence for the next 1 or 2 months, at least as of right now. But remember, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, you have to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And personally, I'm taking a lot of my crypto trades over on BTNX, so I'll make sure to leave a link to BTNX below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can claim some massive trading and deposit bonuses. For example, you can claim up to $40,000 in trading bonuses. And also, if you deposit just $1,000, you get a $200 bonus into your BTNX account. This is basically free money from the exchange, which you can actually use to trade crypto over on BTNX. But these massive bonuses here are only available if you use that first link below this video to actually make your BTNX account. So if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, or preparing to take the next trading opportunity, you might as well get set up ready to go using that first link below this video to take advantage of these major bonuses here. And in case you're wondering, BTNX is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want BTNX as an exchange, there's also 2bit as another option out there, another exchange that I also trade on. So I'll also make sure to leave a link to 2bit below this video. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can also claim some massive bonuses that are only available using that link. And also that link below this video will take you to this page where there's currently a $3 million trading competition happening right now over on 2bit. So once again, if you're trading crypto anyway, you might as well check it out. And in case you're wondering, 2bit is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a look at the Bitcoin dominance, and at least for now in the shorter term, the Bitcoin dominance is still holding above this area of support, which is still not really good news for the altcoin market, because we should only really be expecting an altcoin season, a major bullish move for a lot of the altcoin market, only if we see at least a confirmed break in the Bitcoin dominance below this area of support like this, for example. And in case you're wondering, this area of support is still sitting in between around 60.5% to 61% in the Bitcoin dominance. But if the Bitcoin dominance kind of just trades sideways like this in the short term, like what it's starting to do right now, essentially that means a lot of the altcoin market is playing out very similar price action to whatever Bitcoin is doing, not really underperforming or outperforming. So no altcoin season, but also not that bad for the altcoin market. It could be worse because, for example, if we see a further bounce, more bullish price action in the Bitcoin dominance, then that would be really bad for the altcoin market. But for now, we're kind of in between, just in the immediate short term, with the Bitcoin dominance basically just chopping around sideways. Once again, it could be worse, but it also could be a lot better, at least for now. And if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the 3-day time frame, Ethereum is obviously still struggling underneath this major area of resistance, still sitting in between around 3.9k to 4.1k. And obviously for a long time now, since basically around March 2024, for well over a year now, this has been very significant resistance for the price of ETH. And obviously more recently, just over the last few weeks, this has also proven to continue to act as major resistance, as I've been warning about since well before we even hit this area. And so obviously, while the price of ETH is still trading underneath this area of resistance, we should still expect the price to struggle in this area if we ultimately see another retest here. And of course, we're still at risk of another possible rejection or pullback from this area of resistance, as we've seen many times in the past. But if at some stage in the future we can ultimately see a confirmed breakout with candle closes ideally above 4.1k and actually holding this as new support, in that situation that would be extremely bullish for Ethereum. And honestly, if that were to confirm, we'd likely see a bullish move towards the all-time high for Ethereum, towards around $5,000. But once again, only if we first confirm a breakout here, which at least for now has not currently happened. So at least for now, obviously continue to expect the price to struggle in this area and see possible rejections from within that area. And as for short-term support to watch out for, looking at the daily time frame, we obviously have just recently bounced from just above 3.3k closer towards 3350. So really in between around 3250 to 3350. So around 3.3k, and give or take either side of 3.3k. Once again, we do have a lot of support around there on the price chart. But if the price were to actually confirm a break below this area of support, especially below around 3250, in that situation, we could likely see a move down towards roughly 2.8k. But remember, only if we first confirm a break below this short-term area of support. And at least for now, we still have a bearish divergence to watch out for on the daily Ethereum price chart, because we've not yet confirmed any invalidation signal to properly invalidate this bearish divergence. And so obviously this is a sign telling us that obviously we're still lacking bullish momentum. As I've been saying since around 3.8k, I've been warning about this bearish divergence, most likely resulting in a bit more of a pullback, which ultimately we saw over the last 1 week or so. And as I've also mentioned over the last few days, even if the price of ETH were to continue a bit more of a short-term bullish relief, a short-term bounce, for example, if Bitcoin continues a bit more of a bounce from this support, that can help a lot of the altcoins, Ethereum included. And if that's the situation in the short term, even if the price maybe forms a slight higher high, let's just say if we come back up closer towards 4,000 and continue to find resistance in this area, obviously the RSI will likely still be forming lower highs in that situation. And so in that situation, if that were to actually play out, if we only go slightly higher than these previous highs in the price, would still just be forming a larger bearish divergence, kind of like what we saw back here. And so that's still a possible risk to watch out for, which is why I've been saying I'd only really be very bullish on Ethereum again, only ideally if we first see a confirmed breakout above this massive area of resistance. In that situation, if we break that area of resistance, that would be extremely bullish for Ethereum, and basically that would be the end of this bearish divergence. But right now we've not yet seen that. And if we're taking a look at Solana on the 2-day time frame, it's a similar situation for Solana. Obviously in terms of the momentum, we're still kind of lacking bullish momentum, but in the immediate short term we are seeing a bit of a short-term bounce following Ethereum and Bitcoin. As usual, Solana and a lot of the top altcoins follow very similar price action to whatever Bitcoin and the other altcoins are doing. But in terms of short-term support and resistance to watch out for, we still have a lot of resistance at around 167 to 170. And obviously over the last couple of days, the price has been struggling in that area on the price chart. But if we actually see a confirmed breakout, ideally with candle closes back above 170 and actually holding above this area, in that situation would likely see a move at least towards around 180. And then above that, of course, we have this massive area of resistance here sitting in between around 190 to 200. And as for short-term support, obviously we have a lot of support right here based on the local low sitting at around 156, give or take. And below that, we have a lot of support in this area right here sitting in between around 143 to 146. And overall, in terms of what we should be expecting in the short term, once again, just pay attention to my Bitcoin analysis and my other altcoin analysis, because once again, if Bitcoin, for example, plays out maybe a slight little relief here in the short term, that can help Solana and a lot of the altcoins, but overall still lacking a lot of bullish momentum, at least for now. And if we're taking a look at XRP on the weekly time frame, it's a similar situation because we still have a major bearish divergence on the weekly time frame to watch out for. And so remember, this is not a short-term signal. This is not a signal that's telling us if we're going to be bullish or bearish today, tomorrow, or even over the next 1 week. This is a signal telling us that we are at risk of possibly a larger pullback, but at the very least losing bullish momentum over the next couple of months as a very likely scenario. And so this is still currently in place on the weekly XRP price chart. So whatever happens in the shorter term, whether we see little bounces and things like that in the short term, just remember we still have this major warning signal on the weekly time frame. But if we're taking a look at this daily XRP price chart, just in the short term, we are once again bouncing from this Fibonacci level, currently acting as support again, sitting at around $2.90. And so we basically have a lot of support in between roughly $2.90 to $3. But if the price were to confirm candle closes back below $2.90, in that situation, I would expect at least a retracement towards this low right here, sitting at around $2.75, give or take. And below that, we have a significant area of support in between around $2.55 to $2.62. But once again, at least for now, we're still currently finding short-term support at around $2.90. And as for short-term resistance to watch out for, we do have a lot of resistance starting at around $3.10, but really in between $3.10 to $3.20 as the short-term area of resistance to watch out for. And above that, we have a lot of resistance closer towards $3.40. And in terms of the larger price structure, like I've been saying every day over the last half a week for almost 1 week now, this larger price structure is still looking very similar to what we saw near the beginning of this year. And so once again, not a lot has changed over the last 1 day. Yes, we can see short-term bounces, but at least for now, the larger price structure is still not looking too good when we're talking about what we could be expecting over the next few weeks or possibly months. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, obviously Chainlink in terms of the price structure is still technically pointing in the bearish direction. Once again, we could see short-term bounces, but the moment we saw that break below around 1750, below 1750 to $18, that area on the price chart, that was a major change in the price structure from this bullish move into now more of a bearish trend starting to form, at least on the daily time frame. And the last time we saw something similar to what we're seeing right now was around May to June 2025. But obviously I've made that comparison in much more detail over the last couple of days in my last few videos here on the channel. So without wasting your time, without repeating myself, taking a look at support and resistance, obviously we still have a lot of support at around $15.50 and a lot of resistance in this area in between $17.50 to $18. So those levels have not really changed over the last one day. But if the price were to actually confirm a break back below around $15.50 with candle closes below that level, and especially if we fail to get back above $15.50, in that situation, we would likely see a move down towards roughly $13.50, around $13 to $13.50 as the next major area of support. But at least for now, we're still finding a lot of support at around $15.50. And in terms of resistance, once again, I would expect a lot of resistance in between around $17.50 to $18. But if the price were to actually get back above that area, expect major resistance closer towards $20. And overall, just in the shorter term, we're kind of lacking momentum to either direction. So it's unlikely we'll see a major bullish move or a major bearish move, at least for now, just in the shorter term. Obviously, we could see little bounces from support, little rejections from resistance, but overall, we're unlikely going to see a massive move, at least just in the next couple of days, because at least for now, we're simply lacking the momentum. But remember, if you want to get set up ready to go to take the next trading opportunity in the price of any crypto, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And if you want to actually know how you can trade crypto no matter what the price is doing, then make sure to watch these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.